Hello, everyone. We are doing an impromptu talk this morning. I apologize in advance that I am not Nicole. I know you were expecting her. Unfortunately, she's had some card trouble. She will be here later. She's safe. Everything's good. But as a result, she can't do her talk this morning, so I am just doing an impromptu talk here. So bear with me. I can't possibly replace her, but at least I can fill in the time. So the talk I'm going to do this morning is about designing for cost. A lot of people, they're designing their game, they're trying to make the best possible game, and they don't think about the production cost of the game until it's too late. And also, the cost, making changes for cost can actually improve the game, and I'm going to show you how through this talk. So tip number one is know your targets. And what I mean by that is your target market, so who's going to buy your game, right? Because different people are going to be expecting different prices, different production values, that sort of thing. So if you're selling to a casual audience, they're going to want a game that's less than 25 bucks. They're going to want a game that plays in less than 30 minutes. You know, there's a bunch of different things going on there. If you're going toward a hardcore market, maybe they're going to be expecting miniatures or who knows what, right? And they may have a price point of $150 or $60 or whatever it is, depending on the type of game that it is. Know how you're going to manufacture your game. Are you going to do it through the game crafter? Are you doing it through a long run in China? That sort of thing, because you can make different design decisions based on how you're going to produce the game. And then know your target price, and a lot of that comes back to your target audience. So have a price in mind that you're trying to hit, and hit it. Figure out what you need to do to change your game to hit that price. So big experiences don't have to cost big money. That means you can build an amazing game without making it cost $140, right? You just have to, adding more components doesn't necessarily make for a bigger experience. So you can cut back some of those components and just design your game better. And I'm going to show you some examples now. Actually, we'll start with The Captain is Dead, one of the games that I designed. In fact, all the examples I'm going to use in here are all games I designed on the Game Crafter. So, and they're both designed for the Game Crafter and for long production. So we'll talk a little bit about all of that stuff. So I originally designed The Captain is Dead. We released it to Kickstarter back in 2014. It was designed to be produced on the Game Crafter for $50 as the selling price to customers. Medium weight game, 1 to 7 players, in 90 minutes, all right? It's a co-op game. And if you guys have questions along the way, feel free to shout them out, raise your hand, that sort of thing. We don't have to wait till the end. So, again, the target price was 50 bucks. The cost was $41 on the Game Crafter. And the bulk cost was $30 per copy. So that means that I still, even selling through Kickstarter and that sort of stuff, I still could make a profit on this game, selling it, manufacturing through the Game Crafter. And we ended up manufacturing 1,400 copies of it through the Game Crafter. I could have gone long run, but the whole point was to do it through the Game Crafter, so I did. Now on the Game Crafter, the game is still up there, it's still for sale. It now costs me $45 per copy because I've upgraded the components over the years. But back then, it was $41 per each, or $30 when I did the Kickstarter. And I was still making, you know, plenty of profit per copy. So here are the components that you would find in that particular game. There's a board, 172 cards, 30 pawns, 7 rockets, 3 sticks, little wooden Catan road type things, 16-page manual, and a box. This amount of components allowed me to play a 7-player game. 7 players is not your average size for a game, right? Like when you look at a game in the store, you're looking at a game that's usually 2 to 4 players, all right, for 50 bucks. I was doing a 7-player game for 50 bucks. This is when a consumer sees that, they go, oh, it can play 7 players. That adds value to the game, right? But to make it 7 players, all I had to do was add a couple of pawns and a couple of extra cards. It wasn't like the game mechanics were such that it would play fast at 7 players still. So component-wise, all I had to do is add a few extra components that maybe cost me $1, maybe $2, and all of a sudden I went from a 4-player game to a 7-player game, right? And that's big value without big cost. Does that make sense? Okay. So as I said, I've been upgrading the components as the Game Crafter upgrades. So for example, about like a week into the campaign, we actually released, the Game Crafter released sticker pawns. You can see those on the bottom there, where you can put a little image of the character on the pawn. And this is again back in 2014. Originally, I was using the avatar pawns that you see up at the top. The avatar pawns are awesome. They look great. The problem is I wanted the artwork of the characters on them because I had already started designing subsequent games that were going to come out, and I absolutely needed the character artwork on the pawns because there are different, you know, the different interactions required it. You couldn't, from a single color, you couldn't tell that there were 5 types of aliens from just black pawns, for example, right? So I knew going forward I was going to need those. So I'm just like, all right, I need art on the pawns. We have this available, let's do it. Cost me a little bit more, but it was still within budget, made a little less money. That's okay. In my case, it wasn't about the money, it was about getting the game out there. And there's still plenty of money to be had at bulk run with sticker pawns. But these are the kinds of decisions that you're making as you go through. Tip 2, waste management. Every production company that you will ever use will tell you how many cards they can fit to a sheet, how many punch-outs they can fit to a sheet, how many, what's the cost effectiveness of this type of pawn or this type of token or that kind of thing. What kind of volumes do you need to hit? Like if you have a dice game, how many dice do you have to produce all at once, and therefore what quantity needs to be in each copy of the game? There's all kinds of things. If you design your game around the target numbers for the production that you're going with, that's a big deal. You can add value with no additional cost. So let's say I had a game, using this first example here, I have a game that only needs 16 cards, but there are 18 that fit to a sheet. So can I do something with those 2 extra cards? Those 2 extra cards are free. I'm paying for them anyway. They're already printed, they're already cut. I'm gonna pay for them. So what can I do to add value to my game since I've paid for those cards anyway, right? Could I add an extra player? Could I add an extra game mode? Could I have some extra reference cards? Whatever it is, build that value out of things you've already paid for anyway. If you have to go to a second sheet of chipboard for something, like let's say you're using chipboard for punch-outs or pawns or that sort of thing, maybe there's some of those things that you could transfer to other types of components so that you wouldn't have to use a second sheet of chipboard, so that you don't have to get an extra die made to punch those things. Whatever the case may be, if you can balance those things, because if you're going to a second sheet of chipboard and you really only need a corner of it, you're wasting a whole lot, right? So either use that whole second sheet of chipboard for something really good that adds a lot of value to your game, or get rid of the second sheet of chipboard and change it out for some plastic tokens or some wooden cubes, or something else that could stand in for what you were going to use the chipboard for. If you have a spare page in your rule book, putting in extra value items like putting in a reference card on the back page of the thing so they can just flip over the rules book and boom, now they've got reference right there, so that you're not having to print something else to be your reference. Or to put in extra value like here's an alternate play mode, or here's a how to play, or here's an FAQ. Any of those kinds of things that you can do to, you're already paying for that extra page in the rule book, you don't have any content for it, you could just throw an image in there, but if you threw something in that's useful, that the players will appreciate, it adds value for no additional cost. Because you were thinking about the waste that you already have inherently in the process according to the design of your game. So this is a game I'm working on right now. It'll be at Protospiel tomorrow. It's an enormous game, a legacy game for up to 5 players, meant to be played over almost 100 hours of content, right? It's a big, big game. And as I was designing it, I didn't give a crap how much it cost to design the thing because I'm just going for a big experience. But as of until recently, it was $300 per prototype on the Game Crafter, right? That's a lot of money. Yeah, so it can cost a bunch. And I think there was another speaker up here earlier that was talking about, or no, maybe I was talking to Jay about it earlier, about Stonemaier Games was making a prototype for Scythe, and every copy of Scythe, when he was making a prototype, was like $250 a copy or something like that, right? Big games have big prototypes that cost a lot of money. Get used to it if you're going to design a big game. If you can't handle that number, don't design that kind of game. But that said, obviously, I need to get that number down by the time we go to production, right? We don't want to be a $300 cost because then it will be $1,500 to the customer, right? They don't want that. So if I want to make it through the Game Crafter, there are things I can do. If I'm making it long run, there are things I can do. So I'm going to talk about some of the things I've already done, and I still have a lot more yet to do. So I've already cut over $100 off that cost, and I'm going to show you a few of those things. And the best part is every dollar I've cut has made the game actually better, and I'll show you why. So there was a big bucket of chits in the game, 500 chits. I've cut it down to 80 now, all right? There were 500 chits in the game, and I was able to replace those with dry erase markers and a bunch of mats that are dry erase, and that saved $45 off the cost right there. It also sped up the game. Nobody's looking for chits, right? Looking through that big vat of chits, where do you find the chit you're looking for? It's even people who know what every little icon meant, it took time. And that's accounting time, not fun time of the game, right? Like all of the maintenance stuff you do when you're playing your game, that's not making your game more fun. Get rid of the maintenance if you can. So this was one way to get rid of the maintenance. All you have to do is know where your marker is, which is in your hand because you're using it all the time. Pop it open, you write down a number, you're done. It replaced all of those chits. Well, almost all of those chits. Okay. I was using envelopes to keep various cards. This is a legacy game, so my mic is falling off. This is a legacy game, so there's a lot of content that you open up and have to, you're not dealing with all the content all the time. You know, it's as the story develops, more content becomes available to you, that sort of stuff. I was using envelopes on the Game Crafter. You can do custom printed envelopes. I had 32 of those. They're $1.50 a piece, right? So that's a lot of money. It's like $48, I think that comes to. So I saved by switching to a deck box, which you can see down below, with divider cards to set that all up. I have the exact same content, organized exactly the same way, but I saved $30, and it's way easier to find what you're looking for because you don't have a pile of envelopes that can get scattered to the wind. You just have an index that you're thumbing through, and it's already in order, right? I know exactly where in the box I'm going to find that thing. $30 saved and time saved. It's a better game because of that. At the end of the game, you have to save your state. At the end of each play session, you're saving your state, like what resources have we accumulated throughout the game. I was doing that through a score pad where you'd write down, you'd make little check marks on it of all the different little things that you're doing. Everybody universally hated that. I hated it, right? It was terrible because it wasn't the writing it down that sucked. It was the next time you played, you're like, where did I write that down again? I got to go searching through all these pages of notes to try to find the thing. Turns out I was able to just add it onto a dry erase component I already had, so it cost me nothing to get rid of that score pad, just write it down on the edge of one of the books that was already in there that has a dry erase section on it. So now you can just write down those numbers. It's inside of a book that is closed, so it's not going to get rubbed off between sessions or anything like that, right? And it cost me nothing to get rid of it, and I created a better experience. Had 34 chipboard standees in addition to those 500 chits that I told you about before. The standees were the pawns. Eventually they might get replaced with miniatures, I don't know. That's a production decision once I figure out who the publisher is going to be. But the point is, for now, by getting rid of those chits or those standees and replacing them with sticker pawns, I was able to get rid of a whole other sheet of chipboard, saving me $4 per copy on my prototypes going forward. That's a pretty big deal. And the plastic, because it's not just the same color on the edge of every one of these standees, even if the standee is, instead of being this way, it's this way, so you're seeing this edge of it, you can see a color. So now you have an idea of what that thing is, even if you can't see the actual sticker that's on this side. So it's a better player experience as well. So again, able to save a bunch of money, able to provide a better play experience by doing it. Next tip, bulk, oh yeah.
So when you're talking about that, are you just talking about specifically material costs, or do you know if that actually lessens the weight of it as well?
I didn't, oh yeah. The question was, did it reduce the material cost or did it also reduce the weight? And I assume you mean shipping weight?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't actually measure the weight. I have no idea if it reduced the weight, but it probably did because I wasn't using the whole sheet of the chipboard, but that whole sheet would have been inside the box even though it wasn't punchable. So I don't know if pawn for pawn I'm saving any weight, but overall I'm definitely saving some weight. So, okay, bulk gains. There's a lot of different things, different ways to gain money back when you do things in bulk. And bulk doesn't have to mean millions or thousands or whatever of units of things, but doing anything in a repetitive manner, you can do it faster if you're doing lots of it than if you're doing one of it. That's why a single copy of a game from the Game Crafter will cost you a lot more than each individual unit copy of a game that you produced 3,000 of with Panda in China, right? It's not, like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, Chinese don't get paid anything. That's not the issue. The issue is they're making 3,000 copies of that thing so they can set it up and their machines do most of the work, right? It's not that their labor is so much cheaper. Their labor is a little cheaper, but a lot of it is just simply they can make better use of automated processes because they're doing it 3,000 times in a row, not one time in a row. So the same thing happens inside your game. If you needed, let's say you had a bunch of pawns in your game, right? If you could use the same color of pawn, so in the case of these sticker pawns right here, if I could use the same color of that pawn rather than using 3 different colors like you see there, picking that at the Game Crafter, you're paying a picking fee, to get it off the shelf and put it in your box. It's cheaper to buy 10 of the same thing than it is to buy 10 of 10 different colors. It's cheaper because they only have to go find one bin and pick out 10 of them out of that one bin versus going to find 10 different bins to get the 10 different colors of them. Does that make sense? And we pass that savings on to you when you do it. So you'll see on the Game Crafter, there's a price for 1 of something, for 10 of something, for 100 of something, for 1,000 of something. So when you go and pick that stuff, and the same thing is true, by the way, when you go in long run production. If their picking procedures for building out the kits that go into your game are simpler, they will charge you less, and therefore your game will cost less. So taking advantage of scaling opportunities is a big way to save money when you're designing. And one way you could get around that, for example, in my case, I wanted the different colors, and there are some things that we could get into that are game specific that I don't want to get into in here, but the point is, if I used the same color pawn but just printed a different color sticker on it, that's one way you could reuse the same color and not have to, I'm not having to get, like if I was going long run, I'm not getting the same pawn injection molded for 10 different colors. I'm getting one color, and then I'm printing the stickers because they can print the stickers in any color you want and it doesn't matter, like cost-wise. So then I'm saving that money on the actual plastic piece and able to get a little bit cheaper price. So you can do that with everything, dice, pawns, tokens, cards, all kinds of things. The more you have of something, of one thing, the cheaper it is. Every time you have to switch to another thing, another size of card, another color of plastic, another shape of wood, whatever it is that you're doing, every one of those things is going to cost you extra money. So that repetition is good. Some components also have better bulk prices than others. And this is especially true on the Game Crafter. So like chipboard is fairly expensive if you're doing it one-off, but it's fairly cheap if you're doing it in bulk. So you can get a pretty massive savings there. So if you're running a crowd sale, for example, for your game, there's actually a lot of room to move on something like chipboard, where there may not be a lot of room to move on maybe a deck of cards or something like that in bulk. So look at the cost, the scaling costs of things. And even if you're going to China to get this stuff done, same thing is true there. There are different scaling costs for different materials, different shapes, different colors, different everything. So ask about alternatives that could lower the price if I just change to this thing. And that thing might be completely inconsequential to your game, but it saves you an extra $3 a copy on the game. That's a big deal, right? Especially if you're selling 1,000 copies, you just saved yourself $3,000 off of that. Okay, so another game I'll have up here at Protospiel tomorrow, Magnate. It's a $60 game. That's my cost, essentially, to produce the game, and I want to crowd sale it, right? Crowd sales and Kickstarters and things like that, people are price sensitive. They want a good deal. How do I make this a sellable game when my cost is essentially $60? It's actually $59, but still. So let's break it down. It's a 2 to 6 player game. It's a 90-minute play, roughly. It needs a calculator to play it. That's the kind of game it is. I'm not saying I'm including a calculator in the game. I'm just saying you got to pull out your smartphone and use your calculator app. So therefore, it's a niche audience, right? You're not your average game. Not everybody's going to want to play with a calculator. So my audience size is small. So crowd sale is perfect for this. Long run, I'm not going to sell this in stores. It's too niche of an audience. $59 component cost. How am I going to get this so that I can crowd sale it? Well, here are the components that are in the game. There's 50 gold cubes, 200 silver cubes, 1 giant gold meeple, 1 quadfold mat, 180 cards, 6 custom punchouts, 8-page rule book, 1 medium pro box. These are the components. I cannot get rid of any of the components. I've already scaled it down to do this. So how do I get my price down? Just have to be a little creative. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to turn it into a 2 to 4 player game instead of a 2 to 6 player game. By doing that, I'm down to the stuff here. I won't read it to you again and bore you, because I'll do the comparison in just a second here. And then I will make a 5 and 6 player expansion so that I have lost nothing from the game. All right. So all of those components will be moved to the other game or to the expansion. So that saves me in the base game $6 on punchouts, because the 6 punchouts that I need, that means it's spanning 2 sheets. So I'm putting 1 sheet in the base game of 4 punchouts, 1 sheet where it's only 2 punchouts in the secondary game or in the expansion. I'm moving 54 of the playing cards over to the expansion, and that's saving me $5 per copy. I'm moving 100 of those silver cubes over to the expansion, because I don't need them when you're only playing 2 to 4 players. So I'm moving those over to the expansion. And here's the thing with that. I'm moving 100. Do you know why I'm moving 100?
Bulk cost. Right?
The bulk cost, exactly. It's because remember I said there's a price break at 1, 10, 100, 1,000. So moving 60 cubes over, I'm paying the 10 price. But if I move 100 cubes over, I'm paying the 100 price for picking. So I'm saving money by going to the 100 unit scale, or keeping the 100 unit scale even in the 2 to 4 player or the 5 or 6 player version. All right. So that turns my main game cost into $44, which means on the crowd sale I will still, and this is the one-off pricing, by the way. This is not the bulk pricing. So on the one-off pricing, even if one person buys a copy of the game, I will make $6. When I sell it for 50 bucks, I'll make $6. Which is a really healthy profit, actually, when you think about it as a game designer. You go to a publisher, you're going to make $1.50, $2 at the most per copy that you sell. Granted, if they're in distribution and they know how to market the crap out of your game, you can make a lot of money because they'll sell a lot of units, right? But on a per game basis, $6 a copy is a big deal. That's a lot of money. The expansion is going to cost 16. I'll sell it for 20. I'll still make $4 a copy. But before, if I sold the whole game for 60 bucks, I would make $1 a copy. Now I'm going to make $10 a copy essentially if they buy the thing, and I'm selling it for 70. I've created value by breaking it up so that the people who only want to play a 2 to 4 player game can buy the 2 to 4 player experience. But if you are in a bigger group, like my group, we always play with 5 players. It's just the size of our group. So I need that 5 player experience. That's why all of my games always support 5 players at least. So that experience is still there. Yeah.
How is the crowd sale going to work if you're selling to?
You can sell up to 3 products at a time in a crowd sale, and each one of them scales with, you get the discounts as copies are purchased on each one.
Okay, so people can choose, I just want this.
That's right. They can just get the base game. They can get the base game and the expansion as 2 separate things if they want. So therefore, maybe I'll sell 100 units of the base game and I'll only sell 50 units of the expansion, but the expansion will still be getting discounted as people buy copies of the crowd sale. I just realized, I'm sorry, she asked the question of, what was your question? I answered it without saying it.
How is the crowd sale going to work?
Right. How's the crowd sale going to work with multiple copies, or breaking it up like this? And you can have multiple products in it. You can have 3 products. But the thing I was going to say is, I didn't explain before what a crowd sale is. I'm sorry about that. There's probably a bunch of people in the room that don't know what that is. The Game Crafter has its own crowdfunding platform called Crowd Sales. Works exactly like Kickstarter except for 2 things. One, you're always going to fund. There is no tilt. With with a Kickstarter, you have to reach whatever your funding goal is before it will fund, right? And that's important because if you only sold 1 copy, you don't want to go to China and try to order 1 copy of something. That's not going to work, okay? But at the Game Crafter, you can do that. The other thing that's different about it is there are no stretch goals, not ever. No stretch goals, no add-ons, none of the craziness that comes where you're adding content in the middle of the campaign, which generally screws the creator, by the way, because they didn't plan. A lot of creators, especially first-time creators, do not plan these stretch goals and things into their Kickstarter price at the beginning. So when you start adding stuff, you're adding cost and reducing your profit and increasing the chance that you are going to fail even when you succeed, right? With a crowd sale, what happens is for every 10 copies that are sold, the price goes down for every backer, no matter when they backed. If they're the first backer or the last backer, they're getting the best price based on how many people buy into the crowd sale. That's what a crowd sale is. That's what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about how do I make this work for a crowd sale.
One quick question on
Yes, Rod.
with the multiple item crowd sale, it's the 10 sales of the expansion pack lower the price of the expansion pack and 10 sales of the main, or is it?
Yes, okay. So
Yeah.
Rod's question is, with the crowd sale, do the scales of discounts go separately for, if you have the main game and the expansion, does the main game scale separately from the expansion, or do they scale together based on the number of sales? The deal is that they both scale separately. So if I sell 100 copies of the main game, that does not change the price of the expansion at all. It's based on every 10 sales of the expansion price goes down. Every 10 sales of the main game goes down. Does that get your question, Rod?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's how I thought it would work, but I just was curious.
Yep. And you can have up to 3 products in there. So sometimes when people do, and I didn't put those slides in there, but I'll show you some stuff at the end here on the website. Some people they don't have an expansion, for example, that they want to throw in, so they'll throw in other products that they have sold in the past, and so they'll sell those as part of their crowd sale campaign. And so they're just basically getting extra sales of products they already had, and they're just throwing them on there because they can, and why not? Yeah.
With your 5-6 player expansion,
No box in the 5 or 6 player expansion because I built the box of the main game to support all the content of the expansion. So it's saving the cost, no extra cost from that. Oops. I'm sorry, and the question, I keep forgetting to repeat the question. So the question was, is there a box with the expansion? So the answer is no. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. So last tip that I will leave you with is know your priorities as a game designer. What is it that you are trying to achieve? Are you trying to become rich? Are you trying to sell enough copies to remain profitable? Are you just trying to get your game into the marketplace? What is it that you want out of what you're trying to do? Because that will impact how you design the game for cost. So for example, I gave that example earlier with the captain is dead and sticker pawns, right? It cost me more to put the sticker pawns in than the avatar pawns. However, it was a better experience because I had the art on the individual things, and it allowed for the expansions later when you needed to be able to determine this alien is that type of alien versus this alien is the other type of alien. So are you trying to make as much profit as possible? If you are, you're a publisher and you're trying to make this like a business, then you need to forego those kinds of things perhaps, the kind of decisions where it's costing you more, because you need that money for marketing and your expenses, and you want to eat occasionally probably, those kind of things. If you're trying to get out the best game possible, which you should always try to do, then maybe you're going to make some sacrifices on profit to do it. Or alternatively, you can get creative, and maybe you can do like I've been doing in Gravesend, where I'm literally cutting hundreds of dollars off of the cost of the thing, and I'm still making a better game, right? So just kind of know your priorities as you're going through it. So tips: know your targets, deal with your waste management, bulk gains, and know your priorities. Any questions? Yeah.
Can you talk about the objection of like, I'm not the publisher, I'm just a game designer, why is this my problem?
Okay, yes, I can. So, yep, I'm going to repeat the question. So the question is, I'm a game designer, I'm not a publisher, why is this my problem? One of the many things that you need to have on your sell sheet when you're selling this to a publisher is what are the components, and they're going to just assume you have optimized for best components. And so when they look at that, they're going to start adding up the cost. How many things I'm going to need to make this go? Oops, I should probably get my email out of there. They're going to be looking at those costs, and they're going to go, well, I liked the game, it needs this many components, can I make money at that? And they may not accept your prototype to take into further development simply because the cost was too high, right? So it is important that you are paying attention to those things, even though you are the designer, not the publisher. I'm bringing up the GameCrafter website here while I'm talking because I'm going to take you to the crowd sales and tell you and show you some other examples that I forgot to put in here for slides. But that is one reason. Another reason is, as a game designer, you often will be printing prototypes for various reasons. You will be printing them to take to cons like this one so that you can play them with people. You will take them to cons where you are going to pitch publishers. You're going to have to leave copies with the publishers. If you are going to kickstart it, you are going to need copies to send to reviewers, and maybe a copy that you need as your hero copy for the video, all those kind of things. And every copy that you buy is coming out of your pocket. So every dollar you can save when you are printing those prototypes is dollars that are in your pocket for marketing the game later or just to eat, right? So that is why it's so important. Okay, so this is the crowd sale page. You can get there by just clicking on crowd sales on the GameCrafter nav. Down here at the bottom of the links of crowd sales, you can see past crowd sales that have run. I want to highlight a couple by this gentleman here named Jason Glover. He's the most effective crowd saler in history. He hasn't had the biggest campaign in history. That's still me. Yeah. But he has had the most successful campaigns. In the top 12 campaigns, he has 3 of them. So if you're going to model something for a crowd sale, you might want to look at what he's doing. And one of the things that he did that was very interesting was on this crowd sale, you can see that there were 3 different products. I'm going to go ahead and blow that up a little easier to see. There were 3 different products. There was the game Iron Helm, there was an Iron Helm game mat, and a Iron Helm player mat. You don't need those to play the game. They're optional. They're just big neoprene mats with nice printing on them. They look beautiful, but you don't need them. They're add-ons, right? He put those on there as he has expansions for the game that actually add content to the game. These mats do not add any content. They are just pretty, all right? Are you with me? But he has actual expansions for the game that could have been in those slots. He did not put them in those slots. He put the mats in the slots. Here's the reason. The expansions are 18 card booster packs. They're already pretty damn cheap. There's not a lot of room to get a discount multiplier from selling lots of them. So he just added those. You can add an unlimited number of add-ons into the game or into your crowd sale before the crowd sale begins. You can say, I'm just going to have these 15 add-ons if you want, so people can optionally throw them in. There are no discounts on those add-ons. They're just extra things that can be added to the cart as you're going through your checkout. So he did his expansions as add-ons, but then he put these mats in as the products that are up for sale during the crowd sale that can gain discounts, because at one unit they cost $15, $16, $17, I forget what it was, as the retail price. But then as you go down, you can see if he was able to get down to 100 copies, which he did, it got down to $8. That's half price. He was able to get half price for his customers and still made profit himself by putting those things into the crowd sale as the hero things, even though they're completely optional and add no content to the game. Because it was smart business, right? He was thinking about, where can I maximize the value for my customer? So I would recommend that if you want to do a case study on someone regarding crowd sales, you go down here to the bottom of the crowd sale page, you look at Iron Helm, Desolate, and 4 Tribes. All 3 of those campaigns are him. He does a great job of maximizing value for his customer, and therefore gets a lot of sales on every one of his campaigns. And I should say here that it shows 261 copies sold for Iron Helm. That is just for the base game. That doesn't include all of the expansions and all of the add-ons that we just talked about that he sold. That is just the base game when it shows that 261 copies. He actually sold something closer to 1,000 products in that campaign, right? So anyway, keep that in mind. So if we showed how many products you sold, he'd probably beat me, actually. Although I sold the base game and the Captain is Dead as part of this campaign too. So, oops, I clicked on Star Flickers, which is not what I meant to do. Let's go back here. So with this one, Adrift, the expansion, ooh, all those images are broken. Oh, I know why. Because way back when we did this, we didn't upload images, and I did it out of Dropbox back then. So all of my images are, yeah, this is a very old campaign. But anyway, Adrift was an expansion for The Captain is Dead. So I sold the original game as part of this crowd sale. And so I sold 831 copies of the expansion, but I sold an additional 156 copies of the base game as part of that crowd sale, just because I happened to throw it on there. So we got max discount on the base game, even though it wasn't the thing, again, for the campaign. So anyway, we also didn't have 500 and 1,000 discounts back then, so all these numbers are broken. But anyway, that's it. So any questions, comments, or scathing rebuttal? Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, are these crowd sales, are they curated by you guys?
So the question is, are the crowd sales curated by the game crafter? They are only curated in that you have to go through an approval process to make sure that they are content friendly. So we're making sure that you filled out everything correctly, you know, that it's actually going to work, right? I mean, there's some computer checks that are checking values, like, you know, that your discounts don't exceed your actual costs and things like that. So the computer is taking care of that. But there's a lot of stuff in there that is content related, like, did you actually write up a description that is meaningful to customers? Do you have action shots that are actually going to entice anyone to buy anything? Those are things that a human has to look at. So we have an approval process for that to make sure that these things that your campaign, kind of looks good, conforms to the site. You don't have a bunch of broken images like I had on my campaign before, and that in general you're not flagrantly like showing something that you shouldn't be showing, like an illegal activity or something like that. Anyway, but that's what we look for. But other than that, we don't curate them. Anybody can run any crowd sale anytime they want. So anyway, what else? Any other questions? Yeah.
How, I'm assuming this is going to be down to the publisher, but how willing are publishers to work with designers as far as getting that sell sheet to a point where they want it? Would those just outright say, just no, we're not interested, and not tell you why? Or would someone be willing to say, like, hey, if you can cut off X components, maybe we can make it work?
Right. So the question is, how willing are publishers to work with you on your sell sheet with the component list, getting that component list down? I haven't personally worked with a ton of publishers, so I can't say what they all do. But the ones that I have worked with have told me the reason that they rejected me in most cases. Like they'll say, I'm not interested in this game because it doesn't fit my content catalog or what we're looking for. I'm not doing this because I need it to be a $40 game and it's a $50 game, that sort of stuff. So from there, if you can figure it out and resubmit it, sure. I had a game that I was doing with a publisher last Christmas, and he really liked the game, but it needed to be a $40 game and it was a $50 game, and I couldn't figure out how to get it there. So I could have resubmitted it to him. He was open to that, but I didn't because I don't know how to get it to where he needs it to be and still keep it the game that I want to be. So that's another thing. You may be more flexible than I am. Like I want the game to be this thing or nothing. And you may be willing to go, you know what? I'm willing to cut all this crap so I can get it down and get it published. You could be more flexible. I'm pretty inflexible when it comes to that because I don't design games to make profit. I do it for fun. So I want the game that I want to play, especially since if you get a game published, you're going to be playing it a lot at conventions and stuff. So you don't want to publish a game that you hate. So yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How many rounds of prototyping do you usually go through for big projects like Gravesend?
The question is, how many rounds of prototyping do I go through for big projects like Gravesend? Okay. So there's over 100 versions of Gravesend have happened in the last 9 months. And when I say that, I don't mean a complete reprint every time. There's been a complete reprint probably, 18, 20 times in that time. So it's still a lot of money. But generally speaking, most changes, it's like, I need to replace these 20 cards, or I need to replace this game board, or whatever it is. So it's not a complete redo. Sometimes it's just changes to the rules, and I don't have to reprint anything. I just have to remember as I'm explaining it to people, here's what you need to do this time. So it depends on the game also, how many revisions you go through and how long it takes and all that kind of stuff. Gravesend is a big, beautiful beast, and so it needs a lot of editing. Yeah.
Are you going to give a talk next CrafterCon about how you get so much done in your life?
The question is, am I going to give a talk about how I get so much done in my life? And that's easy. Just I don't sleep much. So, all right. Yeah.
Is there a minimum number that you need to hit for the crowd sale? Or is it 10, 20, 30?
The question is there a minimum number that you need to hit for a crowd sale? The answer is 1. You have to sell 1. There are no discounts necessarily if you don't sell 1. I guess, yeah, you could sell 0 and not sell any. But yeah, 1. But to hit the first discount, you have to sell 10. So, yeah.
What's the policy for people taking back a purchase in the middle of a crowd sale?
Okay, the question is, what's the policy for people taking back a crowd sale or taking back a purchase in the middle of a crowd sale? There, it's just like Kickstarter. You just say, I don't want this anymore. And so the content creator will get a notification saying that X person backed out or whatever. There are no charges to the credit card until the end of the sale because we're collecting the information up front, unlike Kickstarter. There's no like survey process. At the end of the crowd sale, it immediately goes into production and we charge everybody's cards. But before that, we don't charge any cards. We just collect the information because we need to give the best price that you've actually reached at the end of the thing. So, yeah.
One good distinction to make compared to what Crypto was just talking about logistically is after a crowd sale, GameCrafter takes care of everything else logistically, correct?
Yes, that's true. So it wasn't so much a question as a statement, but the statement was that unlike Kirk's talk in the previous talk, where he was talking about the logistics of what happens after you've done your Kickstarter, the GameCrafter, for a crowd sale, the GameCrafter does everything. So you've already done all of your work by the time the crowd sale begins, hopefully. You have to at least have made the game and had it all in the system. There are no changes after the fact because it goes into production immediately. So you've uploaded your game. The only thing you have left to do is promote the thing during the crowd sale. But as soon as the crowd sale is over, we handle the credit cards, we manufacture the games, we ship them out to customers. If customers have a problem with the shipping, Heather is back there with customer service helping them out. So nothing do you have to do except collect the money that you made during the Kickstarter, or during the crowd sale. Question.
How long does the campaign run? Is that set by the designer or is set by the GameCrafter?
The question is, how long is the campaign run? I think you mean crowd sale campaign? Yeah. So crowd sale campaign by default is a week, but you can set it to whatever you want. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you crowd sale the same game more than once?
The question is, can you crowd sale the same game more than once? The answer is no. You get exactly one shot at it.
But if you want to put it on as one of those extras, if you do an expansion, for example, you can.
Yes, so he added on, can you add it as an expansion or an extra later? Absolutely, you can add it to a subsequent crowd sale, but each crowd sale is its unique thing per game, so you will not get to run it a second time. Any other thing? Okay. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.